What's up, founders, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Asia Orangio, and I'm the CEO and founder of DemandMaven, where we work with early-stage SaaS companies and startups on reaching their very first growth milestones, troubleshooting their growth, and then, of course, defining their go-to-market strategy. This is a little different than what we would typically do. So, something that I did years back when I first started DemandMaven was I started a website teardown, but I think I only did like one of those actual teardowns. I made that teardown at a time where I was still learning a ton about my own particular business and what I wanted to offer from a strategic perspective, a service perspective. And so in many ways, I was still trying to figure out the business and at the same exact time build it. And to be honest, I just didn't have the time to do website teardowns as often as I would have liked. But because I have heard from so many of you that you really liked the one that I did, you would love to see more, it has slowly come back into my purview. And even more so, like whenever I talk to founders, we always end up talking about what websites they ultimately love and what they think is really impressive. And honestly, I love talking about websites. It's one of the main primary places that marketers tend to focus on. It is the very first impression of the business and of the brand in general. And if it does its job extremely well, it converts so efficiently and effectively. And I just kind of wanted to dig deep into pretty much everything that I know when it comes to website teardowns. So here's the way this is gonna work. I am going to, as much as I possibly can, speak to the camera. But I also actually have my screen being recorded right now. I'm using Loom to record my screen just in case anyone is curious. But I'm also actually going to record what I'm seeing on a particular website. Now, the other thing to know about this is I'm actually going to use some of the most well-known SaaS businesses out there. And the reason why is because we can absolutely do teardowns of maybe lesser known brands, maybe some up and coming early rising stars when it comes to the SaaS world. However, I actually find that when it comes to educating about website and how we think about the website and its purpose and its role and what it's supposed to do, I find that using really well-known brands, I think actually tells us a little bit of a more clear story. And it's just purely because we've already seen the brand grow. So for example, today, we are going to talk about Segment. Segment is one of those websites that I hear about all the time. I personally have always admired the brand. There was a time where I worked at a company that was deep into data integration, so I learned a bunch about Segment. But what I think is so fun about Segment is that they're doing some things today that founders would love to copy. But there's a twist to this particular website teardown. It's not enough to just look at where they are today. We're also going to take a look at where they started. And that, my friend, is going to be where a lot of the learnings come through, and also where we can start to really look objectively at the website journey that Segment in particular has gone through, and really any brand that we look at. So when we take a look at Segment's website, we're gonna start with an older version of Segment's website about 5 years ago from today, and we're actually going to use Web Archive to do this. But we're gonna take a look at where they started, and then we're gonna compare it to where they are today. Now, I actually have a list of things that I like to look for when it comes to the website in general. So for example, we're not just gonna look at this website and kind of like tear it down willy-nilly. There's, I would say, 4 to 5 things that I typically look for when it comes to how well a website is doing, when it's communicating what it ultimately does, and then some of the layout and just website decisions they've made to communicate and display that information. So we are going to take a look at the copy. We're gonna look at the message hierarchy of that copy. We're gonna take a look at some of the elements of the layout. And then we're going to really dissect and understand, okay, but like, what are they actually saying? And if there's anything that is just an absolute tire fire, we're also gonna call that out too. And then we're gonna compare it to what they have today. Part of this is to show that websites are truly a journey, and they absolutely evolve over time. There is no one size fits all when it comes to website, and at the same exact time, websites don't just sit there forever and they never get updated. They are constantly evolving, they are constantly trying new things. And it's really important to also see how brands that have made it have changed things over time. So let's jump in right off the bat into Segment's website. I'm super pumped. I hope that you continue to watch along. If there's anything I can help explain or unpack or talk more about, don't hesitate to let me know down in the comments below. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's do this. let's jump in. So right off the bat, we are on Segment's website from about 6 years ago. And this is what I would consider to be a very simple, kind of basic, more SaaS focused website. And what I mean by that is we've got a menu at the top, then we have a headline, a subhead, and then we've got these 2 buttons, Get Started and then Start Tour. And then below that, there's some logos here. There's another call to action when it comes to the blog. And then way down at the bottom here, I can see what's poking up above the fold to be the next section of the entire homepage. We scroll down and then we've got some product screenshots. We've got another like little product blurb here. And then we get into more of this like left, right kind of traditional, I hate to say traditional because what is truly traditional in SaaS? But we get into this really like traditional like left paragraph copy and headline and then right image, and then we reverse that on the next section, and then we just kind of keep going down the page in that way. So I can tell you just from looking at this that, well, for one, the segment, I actually don't even know if there is a segment logo. So from a brand perspective, I really just see segment in its topography, and I don't see any kind of like logo, which I think is really interesting because segment has a logo. So for example, when we look over here into Segment's website now, there's some very different things that are happening overall. And also it has a very clear brand. Looking at this, I would say there's not necessarily a clear brand presence, but to be honest, 5 years ago, Segment was probably at a stage where it was hitting traction at about this point. They've got some pretty impressive customers like Nokia and Bonobos and Atlassian. So part of me kind of thinks that, okay, yeah, like they're starting to make some headway. It's probably fine if they don't have a huge brand presence right this very second, but brand will become something that is very important to them later on as they go down. But something I can just tell you just by looking at this is that it is clean. They very clearly understand just the really simple, basic fundamentals of having a good website homepage and also just having a good layout in general. So for example, I mentioned we were going to talk about message hierarchy, but we're also going to take a look at the overall layout itself. They have a very clear headline about what it is that they do. They also have one piece of social credibility right off the bat, which I think is really powerful. In the menu, they also have another section for customers, which also tells me that they have even more social credibility and social proof. Just looking at this, we've got one very clear area for social proof, and then we also in the menu even have another section for social proof. Looking at the menu, now this is one of those things that I think it just completely depends on the business and where you're at in your journey. But the other thing that I pick up right off the bat is Segment is very clearly credible, not just in who their customers are, but also they clearly have content on this website. I can go to many different places. It's not just going to be a one-page website. It's not just even 3 pages. It seems like they actually have a lot going on. That tells me that, okay, this is a relatively established business, and if I'm Segment's buyer, that might actually be something that I really truly care about. One thing I do think is interesting is they do not show the product in the top of the fold. And I think that's a really interesting choice because on the one hand communicates that you need to read this for you to understand what it is that we do before we expose you to the product. And on the other hand, it could actually be a detractor in some ways. Some people who are much more familiar with customer data probably want to see the product in some kind of way right off the bat. That does indicate, however, that, you know, we've got the start tour here down below. That kind of makes me think, oh, maybe this will actually take me through the product. So maybe that's kind of how they satisfy that need to see, like, what is this actual experience like? But I do think it's a really interesting choice. Part of me also kind of wonders if, well, customer data, at least at this time, customer data platforms were not necessarily the super mainstream thing. It's much more common in the enterprise world, but it kind of makes me wonder if Segment made that choice back in the day because customer data platforms weren't necessarily a super common platform, and in order for you to make a decision about it, you kind of had to learn about it. You know what I'm saying? But we scroll down, and when it comes to layout and how pages are laid out, I would say I think that this flow is a very open website flow, meaning I can come to this website and go anywhere. I'm not necessarily blocked or forced into a particular path. And that totally just depends on your market and who you're targeting. There are scenarios where that works extremely well, and then there are scenarios where it's important for users to be able to Just visit the site and go wherever it is that they want to go. But I am noticing, however, that there are some sections that highlight core value propositions, and visiting the integrations page, for example, is being one of the very first places that you can go. Granted, there's 4 here, which we'll talk about in just a second. But this clearly demonstrates integrations are really important to this particular company. It's a customer data platform. You're probably going to have to get data into this platform in some kind of way. So I think that's a really interesting, again, very interesting choices, but it looks like it's encouraging me to take certain paths based off of what it is that I just want to see. And after that, again, we get into some of the more, I hate to say typical, but it's the very common SaaS layout, and it's common because honestly, it works, if we're being honest. And then below here, we get to a section where we get into just different aspects of the product, and then it looks like we can go into really specific pages. Yep, so it wants us to explore the integrations. It wants us to explore integrations in different departments and different kinds of integrations with different kinds of tools. And then finally, it looks like are these stories? Yeah, it looks like these are stories, like case studies in particular that it tells. And then yeah, main call to action, visit the support center, become a partner. Okay, gotcha. So from a layout perspective, again, they're making some really smart choices here. I honestly don't have much to nitpick about, but I will say, and this is just from a conversion perspective, we already have a pretty beefy menu. There's lots of things that we can click into here, and we can really choose our own adventure. But I do think it's interesting that there's 2 calls to action, and I actually so here's the thing. They really want you to start the tour. They want you to dig deeper into this product and to learn more about the product itself. The Get Started button actually encourages them to sign up. And then from a blog perspective, this is showing that we are active, we publish content, and there's a Learn More button here. Now, conventional wisdom would say, okay, focus on just 1 call to action. Don't have too many calls to action on the above the fold, because then people aren't going to necessarily know what they want to do next. And I think to some degree, I actually do agree with that. But what I love is they're hitting a few credibility points that I think very clearly matter. And then also, they have a certain sense of the customer journey already. It's pretty clear that people need to learn more about the product before it makes sense for them to sign up. But more than that, it seems like it's pretty complex as well. And I think that complexity, from a tour perspective, it's very possible that this tour actually really clearly educates people on that complexity and then what you can ultimately do with Segment. But okay, let's take a look at the copy. We've taken a look at the layout. Now let's read the copy. We make customer data simple. Segment is the single hub to collect, manage, and route your customer analytics data. Okay, we make customer data simple. That is something that I would say from a copy message perspective, I like how succinct it is and it's short, but short doesn't necessarily always mean better. So I don't necessarily know what Segment is going against, for example. What is the opposite of simple? Well, it's messy. Well, in what way and why is that painful? There are plenty of messy things when it comes to business and data and all of the implications that happen with regard to that. But what I'm missing is, what am I gaining thanks to the simplicity? That's my one critique of this copy. The second critique that I have is actually on the second paragraph. So Segment is the single hub to collect, manage, and route your customer analytics data. But it doesn't necessarily, and I think that's, don't get me wrong, that's super strong. But it doesn't necessarily tell me, but why? Why would I care about that? What is the alternative that sucks about this? Now we move over into the next section. Power all of your apps with the same data. With Segment as your customer data hub, you can focus on building incredible products and attracting more customers instead of wasting time integrating all of your tools individually. Track data to Segment once. We're the last integration you'll ever do. Try new apps with the flip of a switch. Okay, so now we start getting into one of the core value propositions. The first value prop was making customer data simple, and that's the overarching value proposition for the entire product. This product ultimately helps make customer data simple. Now, next, here's how we do that. So this is probably core value prop number 2. Power all of your apps with the same data with segment as your customer data hub. Focus on building incredible products, attracting more customers. Okay, so now we're getting into some wants here. So it kind of sounds like by getting all of our applications on the same page from a data perspective, we can start to focus attention elsewhere. This also kind of hints at maybe a little bit of pain. Actually, no, yeah, the second sentence does exactly that. And instead of wasting time integrating all of your tools individually, track data to segment once. This is the first pain statement that I've heard so far, at least. And I can tell you that, yeah, this makes a ton of sense. I have personally experienced this as a marketer, so I can certainly relate, where the last integration you'll ever do. I do think it's interesting that this pain statement is the lead is a little bit buried here. So the first pain statement that we get, that's really clearly identifiable at least, is not even on the above the fold, at least in this scenario. I guess it's a little bit. So this view is a little wonky. It actually gives me this like full like border on the outside. So I've zoomed in a little bit just to make it more website-like. It does feel like it's burying the lead a little bit. Like I said, I think that the top of the fold is great from a copy perspective, but I don't get the sense of any pain. I get the sense of let's appeal to higher angels, meaning here's a vitamin that we can sell. I don't necessarily get the sense that this is doing something that is a pain that I have that I can very clearly and easily, readily identify. Moving on into query your data into SQL. Start playing with your data in ridiculous detail with Segment SQL. We'll transform and load your customer behavioral data directly from your websites and apps into Amazon Redshift. Save months of engineering time building a data warehouse and ETL pipeline. Okay, so we've got some very clear use cases, and there's also a little bit of pain in there, so I can save months. That's pretty powerful, especially from an engineering perspective. I really appreciate when copy takes this little extra step and makes it feel more vernacular. Start playing with your data in ridiculous detail. That's something I would literally say, which I really appreciate. This is another one of those value propositions where it sounds like we can query really fast, we can power all of our apps with the same data, and I'm sure that there's even more here. One quick note, this image here, it gives me the sense of what the product is going to look and feel like. When it comes to SaaS, one of the biggest decisions you'll have to make when it comes to your website is, do you show pictures of the product or don't you? Or do you do a combination of either graphics or stock photos or just like direct screenshots? It's painstaking when it comes to making those decisions. But honestly, when it comes to website and just the customer journey, there's a number of tests that you could run just to see how it impacts the overall customer journey and then the education level that they have when they come in, the product itself. So in this particular case, I actually really appreciate that they are using at least snippets of the product. They're not showing full-blown screenshots per se, at least from what I can tell. It seems like they're taking really structured parts of the product and then offering that onto the website in into some particular fashion. Okay, now we get into the more like left-right scenario. Install tracking for the last time. Ooh, okay. So something I just want to make sure to highlight when it comes to these headlines is they are all action-oriented. They are not passive. I can install tracking. I can query my data. I can power my apps. These are all active, very active statements. They are not passive by any stretch, and they're also very clear when it comes to what the ultimate action is. I also do think it's kind of interesting that, so Segment's kind of funky because they are, on the one hand, very much a product that it's very clear that they have value propositions, but the way that the copy is structured, at least now, it like borders between value prop and then just straight up like feature copy, if that makes any sense. Like the copy seems to focus on what I can accomplish, which is great. That's awesome. But it also has this undertone of the tactical side of this as well, of like what the feature ultimately is. And that is a very interesting balance to strike. And I think that they actually do it really well here. So again, like they are showing me, again, not full product, but just like a snippet of what this product is ultimately going to kind of look and feel like. Oh, and it's interactive too. Oh, it's actually like really interactive. Wow. Okay. I love when just product experiences like this on the website at least are interactive. This is so cool. Okay, I'm gonna stop playing with that. So our unified tracking code makes integrating new apps simple. You only need to instrument segment once, then flip a switch to install new tools. Reduce all of your tracking code and advertising tags into a single API. Okay. I think that this is super duper clear. It basically starts out with a typical framework or template where this is what it is, this is how it helps you, and this is like either a secondary value proposition or like what that ultimately helps you accomplish, like in the grander scheme of things. And I mean, it's a pretty simple way to organize copy. Send data from anywhere. Send segment data from any device, then we'll transform and send it on to any tool. We support browsers, phones, tablets, smartwatches, TVs, iBeacons, and more. Ooh, iBeacons. Back when iBeacons was a thing that we talked about all the time. Just kidding. Okay, so this is probably I would consider this much more pure feature copy, which is fine, but it's interesting that we kind of went from this overarching idea fundamentally of what we can do with segment, and then we got deeper and deeper and deeper, and then we got much more feature oriented over time, which actually is not a bad flow. I think it makes a lot of sense. And then finally, we get to the section about putting your data to work. Your business runs on customer data, but each team needs a different view, and Workspace uses a single hub to manage and dispatch the data to the apps you use every single day. This is where we get into the integrations pages again. And I like that they are showing the array of integrations based off of maybe the department or the type of software it ultimately is that they're integrating with. So I do think that that's really smart as well. And then they've got even more social credibility, so social proof, and then a real big call to action at the bottom that is clearly identifiably the most important call to action, even though it's got 2 buttons, which I do think is really interesting. But they very clearly want you to start the tour first. They don't necessarily want you to sign up right off the bat, unless of course you've done the tour. Once you do the tour, then you can come up and sign up. And then they've got a couple of other calls to action, just in case there's maybe someone looking at this page who wants to be directed in a particular path. But this really, to me at least, speaks to software tools that want to be on the segment platform, which I think is another part of that. It's not quite like a marketplace, but I guess, they want software tools to be in this because obviously with more integrations, the more usability it has, and then of course it enters into new markets naturally. So, okay, overall, this is actually still really well done. This is not this is actually a really good website, and this was built, 6 years ago. So I think it speaks volumes that right off the bat, Segment knew what their message was. It probably took them a few years to get here, granted, but over time, it's very clearly just become, it's just so succinct. It speaks directly to what the value proposition ultimately is of the business and of the product itself, and then it breaks it down, pretty concretely. I actually don't think that anyone would be in a bad place after having copied something like this. I think if you were to copy this structure, especially knowing segment the product and knowing what kind of product it is and who it targets, I think it makes sense. What I will say, however, is I get the impression that this is for developers or at least technical people in some kind of way. And they're talking about SQL, and they're also talking about building a data warehouse, save months of engineering time building a data warehouse. Okay, they're either talking to the CEO or they're talking to someone who runs a engineering or development team. They're directly showing what this code experience or tracking experience looks like, and that makes me feel like they are targeting technical people, at least looking at this. I'm trying to think what else I want to say about this. Yeah, the message is organized extremely well. They clearly have some social proof. They are very clear when it comes to the message of the product and what they're communicating and why. One thing I would say that would make this, I think, stronger would just be if the ultimate value proposition at the top, if maybe in the sub copy or the sub paragraph copy, if it talked about the pain, what is it that we're combating with segment? What is the alternative that is clearly worse, and why? I think that's probably the one thing I would add to this, especially above the fold. And I actually don't mind the headline. I think it could be a little stronger, but I think to the right person, this probably makes a lot of sense. So good job, segment, especially, back in the day segment. So next. Now let's move over into Segment's website today. Now this is where we are going to see a very different approach and experience, and we're going to go through the same list that we just went down into, and we're just going to take a look at what's different, what's new. Okay, so I'm on the Segment website now, and this is what it looks like as of January, what day is it? 25th, 2021. Such a different brand experience. First of all, it very clearly has a brand experience. I think that's something to point out. I see this logo. It's really clear that there's certain design choices that are being made. I still get the sense somehow that this is still a technical product, but now I actually have a visual that demonstrates what the ultimate value proposition is. Now, here's the interesting part when it comes to copy. They are now going by the leading customer data platform. This is it. This is who we are. This is the product. It's this category, and we're number one. That's what they're basically saying. Join 20,000 plus businesses that use Segment software and APIs to collect, clean, and control their customer data. I can create a free account and see how it works. These are different experiences. Okay, I honestly can't tell if this is if this will take me somewhere different, or if this is clearly like a sign up. Oh, but this actually might still be the product tour. It's very possible that these are still the same two calls to action. We have a little bit of we have more social credibility, the 20,000 companies, and then we've got this scrolling logos that are coming through, and we see Google. I wonder if that's just static. Does that ever move? Probably not. Yeah, because I just want you to see that forever. I wouldn't be surprised, at least. DigitalOcean, Trivago, Fox, like there's all these brands. Okay, it does move. Atlassian, Instacart. I would not be shocked if this was very intentional, on purpose. Yeah. Okay, so next we move into this other section. Ooh, okay. Let me just do a really quick scroll. I just kind of want to see, first of all, beautiful. So kudos to the design team. Absolutely stunning. Okay, we've definitely simplified some things. But let's go back to the section that we were just at. Okay, empower every team with good data. So this is the first probably true value proposition that we're hearing, and it's to empower every team with good data. Segment collects user events from your web and mobile apps and provides a complete data toolkit to every team in your company. Okay, so this is what it does. This is actually not different really from kind of like what we were saying before. Oh, we have a very intense menu. That's really interesting. Okay, so from here, it looks like, oh, okay, so each of these are connected to this section of the page. Okay, very cool. So I can drill down into the marketing aspect of this, and I can get the single view of the customer. Then there's product, and I can get the data right, understand your customer. Then there's engineering. It's the one API, cleaner code, best in class SDKs. Okay, so already a shift when it comes to who we're potentially talking to. It seems like Segment probably learned over the years that they're talking to many different teams and therefore different personas, so they're gonna need to see something different based off of what Segment does. It also sounds like Segment as a platform has grown, one, and then two, it's really important that, again, the different aspects of the platform speak to either the right persona or segment or what have you. And it seems like they're accomplishing that. They're choosing to accomplish that on the homepage, which is a very interesting choice as well. It also makes a ton of sense given how big it sounds like Segment as a platform probably is compared to other software tools. So we're gonna start with marketing. Marketing, single view of the customer. This is interesting because it is not an action as a headline, but the second line kind of is. So unify your customers' touch points across all platforms and channels, and then you can explore the marketing section of this website. Okay, so I see. Okay, so Segment, fast forward 6 years to today, And now it's very clear that the homepage needs to speak to this particular part of the platform for this particular team, and we need to tell that story, and we need to give them their own section to go and learn about that. So that's what the homepage is going to do. It's basically going to encourage people to take a particular funnel based off of who they are. It seems like, however, okay, so from a design perspective, they are actually speaking to many different value props in just one section, and they're using what looks to be like an animation to accomplish that. So I can click on one of these and look at what that copy or message ultimately is. So we've got the single view of the customer, then we've got real-time audiences, and then we've got activate in 300 plus tools, which is, I don't know what that means. Best in class tools, activate audiences and 300 plus marketing tools in real time. Okay, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting such non-action oriented copy. And here's the thing. Here's the funny thing about when brands make it, is that they don't necessarily have to explain as much because people know who they are. Now, I bet you if we were to go into this marketing page, there'd probably be a lot more copy. Yeah. Okay, a little bit more. Maybe not. Okay, no, yeah, there's definitely, yes. I would say that there's definitely more copy for sure. There's more things to read. Not as long of a page, but again, they're at a place where they probably don't have to do as much explaining so intently and deeply of what it is that they do. It's probably something where they touch enough, and then it's the entire website at that point is geared to send you to a case study or to do the tour or to learn even more. And then at that point, you could probably either just sign up or you could request a demo or something to that effect. Okay, moving over into the product section, we can build privacy first. Oh, actually, no, the first one is launch with the best stack. Okay, oh, all right. So already different. This is the first action statement I think that we've gotten. Let me just double check that. For marketing, single view of the customer, real-time audiences, best-in-class tools. Okay, yeah, this is the first action statement that we're getting when it comes to a headline in the copy text on the homepage. Enable the best product analytics, A/B testing, and data warehouse tools with the flip of a switch. Okay, this is telling me, again, what I can do. I can standardize my data, align your marketing, engineering, and analytics teams with a shared data dictionary. And again, another action-oriented statement. This is an active statement. It is not passive, which is awesome. And then build privacy first. So automatically detect and classify PII in real time. I can also accelerate compliance with GDPR, CCPA, and more. Okay, these images are, again, it seems like Segment has continued this style of giving you really like snippets of what the ultimate product looked like. And I think that makes a lot of sense, especially given, it seems like Segment now is a pretty big platform in terms of what it enables different teams to do. One thing I will say though, is this is hands down the most action-oriented copy that we've seen so far from a headline perspective. Not saying that there's not other action-oriented copy in the rest of the website. It's pretty clear that, yeah, just from like a product perspective, this is what I can ultimately do. And it makes sense, I think, to say that to the product team. Going back, actually, empower every team with good data. I still think that this, again, appeals to the higher angels, if you will, of don't you want this? And it's like, okay, yes, I get it. So I think, to be fair. Okay, so engineering, I'm expecting to see something technical, and it looks like they've actually kept the similar style where they give you, this isn't working for me, but okay, I kind of expected to click like these things and was hoping to see something different in each of these. But it's not shocking that they would give you something technical to ultimately look at. So this one API, cleaner code, use one API to collect analytics data across any platform. We have SDKs for JavaScript, iOS, Android, and 20 plus server-side languages. Query and SQL. So this is some very similar messaging actually to the old messaging of the old website. Will automatically load your analytics data into your data warehouse, such as Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery, Snowflake, and many more. Deploy custom functions. Okay, again, I'm seeing something really technical here. This is actually the first, Okay, the second action-oriented headline, but deploy custom functions with just 10 lines of JavaScript. You can build any integration, no additional infrastructure required. Okay, and then we get down into here is what it looks like with segment versus without segment. And yes, okay, so segment really wants to be the centralized hub when it comes to data, and without it, everything has to kind of connect to itself, and not everything has integrations with everything else. So you end up with disparate data and different data hubs, but it seems like segment wants to be the ultimate data hub, which makes a lot of sense. It is the ultimate data pipeline. Together, our products create your ultimate data foundation. We've got a bunch of social proof here. We've got some pretty big brands that we recognize. I'm pretty sure if I were to click any of these that they would take me to a case study. Or no, okay, so it's just the business that has the testimonial. Oh, but there is a call to action to read a case study. That's what I thought. And then after that, let's see, we've got a call to action, and then we've got the footer. Okay, let's take it back from the top. There's a lot going on here. The first thing that I want to discuss is the difference in copy. Already, we've got a very consistent message in that I don't think that we're not talking about being a data platform, but so much of what segment touts on the above the fold actually doesn't really have as much to do with what you can accomplish as a first-time visitor. It's much more about who segment is and how big we are now that, you know, we've made it or whatever. And I think that this is one of those things that can be a little bit misleading for a founder in the early days, because you look at a website like this and you think, great, all I have to do is just copy what they're doing or get really close to it, and then that's it. But I think the reality is that segment has already grown. They've already gone through the rough times and the hard times and then the good times, and then they've gotten to a point to where they've hit, in some ways, critical mass, and then some, and they still continue to grow. They don't necessarily have to do a lot of the same exact things, though, that they did way back in the day. But I do think that there are some things that are missing from this experience. Even though it is beautiful, it is stunning, I think from a design perspective, this is very rich, and I think from a design perspective and a UI or UX, whichever one you want to use, perspective, I think that this is doing a lot of great stuff. But message-wise, if I were brand new to the customer data platform world, I wouldn't necessarily know what I would get from using the segment. And that's not being harsh. That's just comparing it to what we read in the older website. To come off right off the bat as like we're the leading customer data platform, I think is probably fine, but I don't necessarily know what that means for me. So when it comes to what is the ultimate pain that segment is solving for people, and what is that ultimate core value proposition that anyone is going to experience by using this platform, it's not the above the fold, and that's probably okay. Granted, they've made it. They don't have to play by the same exact rules anymore. But I do think that the stronger headline is empower every team with good data. That to me should be the above the fold. I think that this social credibility, this is probably something that can happen after. So I'd actually switch these sections from a message hierarchy perspective. When it comes to the copy itself, I think it's very clear, it's very clean. There aren't any extra words that don't matter as much. But I will say, I kind of miss some of the vernacular. So in the earlier example, one of my favorite lines on the older website was, like, instead of wasting time, or like, you can build incredible products. There was another thing that I really loved. Let's see, where is it? Oh, yeah. Start playing with your data in ridiculous detail. I love that. That has so much personality. And I admit, I miss a lot of that personality on this future version of the segment website. I also gotta say, it buries the lead quite a bit when it comes to what the problem is that they're solving. Now, again, they likely don't have to as much anymore. Anyone coming to the segment website has probably heard of segment 1,000,000,001 times. It's also probably a lot of repeat people coming back to segment over and over and over again. I would be shocked actually if people brand new at least were coming to the main segment.com homepage, meaning net new traffic. They might go to segment.com, but there also just might be campaigns running in the background that puts them on a very special landing page, and they don't have to worry as much about that. So that's kind of, I think, that's one of the bigger differences, I would say, when it comes to this kind of copy, but also the stage of the company has a lot to do with what they're saying. And I hope that if you take nothing else away from this video, that is really clear. You can evolve as a business and grow and hit a certain sense of scale and traction, and you get to a place to where your choices when it comes to messaging and website, they change and your priorities change. But if it were me now, if this were an early stage company, I would be like, okay, I need to know what the problems are. I need to know what the pains are. I need to know why does this product exist? It's pretty stripped down when it comes to pain. Actually, I think the first true pain experience that we get is actually this like with segment and without segment. Like it's, it's pretty clear, I think. But I think the other thing I'm kind of missing is I'm missing that action-oriented copy. And I'm also missing knowing what the pain is that each of these sections of the platform are ultimately tackling. So like what are the associated pains, for example, with not having a single view of the customer? What are the associated pains with not building privacy first? I mean, there's so much nuance in there that someone coming in brand new, never having heard of Segment, which is still possible, never having heard of a customer data platform, they might come into this and think, okay, great, but like, what does that do for me? Like, what does that mean? I think that's something that I miss personally. But overall, like I said, stunning website. I do think that the copy could actually be improved here. I think that there's actually stuff to do even on this experience, even on this website. I don't think it's enough to say that anyone viewing this for the first time can just assume what the pain is. I think you might, personally, I think you kind of have to tell them, oh, it solves this and here's how, and here's why this is better than that old way of doing things. Customer credibility, or social proof is very, very abundant on this website. So I think that they've nailed that. I think the message hierarchy, I actually would change it if they were an early stage company. I think based off of the success and the growth that they've experienced, they probably don't need to, and that's fine. I do like that they've actually included an image on the above the fold, which is different than what they've done previously. So historically, it was all about the social credibility and then the message, but now they've actually got both, really. They've got the product. They've actually deprioritized the message, which I think is a little sad, but that's okay. But they clearly have some social credibility. So if anything, they want you to know, hey, we're the biggest and we're the most legit. Here's what we do, which is fine. You can totally do that. But I think it just works better for them now. If they had done this years ago, they wouldn't be able to make this claim, right? So it's definitely, if it's not intentional, it certainly seems that way. But also, it's very clear that they've gotten to a place where they don't necessarily have to do the old things anymore. Okay, the last couple of things that I'll say and then I'll wrap this up. One thing I do really appreciate is this call to action actually hovers with you the entire time you're on this website, which I really appreciate. The second thing I really appreciate is that every single section on the homepage does encourage you to funnel down into another page. So we looked at the marketing page, for example. It seems like it's important for new visitors to kind of choose their path and then to learn more from there. And I think that that makes a lot of sense. From a copy perspective, this is probably the one section where I just feel like it needs more. There's too much to assume here, and I just think that this could say more, and it could also tackle like why it absolutely sucks to not have segment. And I think that like, sure, this visual communicates it, but I don't know what the implications of this are. I don't know what the pain of this is and what the implications of that pain, what are the consequences of not doing it in the way that segment recommends. That's what I'm missing personally. And then I think the last thing that I would say is this call to action is not as crystal clear to me. It actually blends maybe a little bit too much with some of the other sections. I actually think that we had a stronger visual call to action on the older website. So this let's make it simple and start your free trial today. I think this green breaks up these two sections of white, and I think this kind of like creamish color below. Maybe that's just white also. That's white. This is a really clear call to action section. But when we go to the new segment website, the footer almost kind of sticks out more than this call to action section. So I would say if it were me from a design perspective, I would make this I would either change the color, I would add something to this to make it really stick out as this is what you do. The next thing that I will say is this copy is lazy. I'm sorry, it's lazy. Getting started is easy? No. Tell me what I'm going to get by starting. What does starting a trial or connecting my data get with, what do I get out of that with Segment? Getting started is easy? No. I would instead say something like, are you ready to connect all of your customer data, and are you ready to centralize all of your data into one hub? Ready to stop, dealing with all of these other crappy things? Like, those are the kinds of calls to action headlines that I would have in this particular section. So I would punch this up. I would also literally punch up the copy as well. When it comes to copywriting, the person that I always look to and highly recommend if you are in need of copywriting services is my really good friend, Leanna Patch. But she runs Punchline Copy, highly recommend. Maybe I'll include a link down below. But she has an offering called literally the punch up. So if you've got copy that needs to be punched up in some kind of way, I would take a look at her services. She's incredible, and she might actually even agree with what I'm saying. No pressure, Leanna, if you're watching this, but just saying. Okay, so we did the teardown. We looked at the old and we've looked at the current. And now I gotta say, looking at this, I think it does a lot of really cool things, but I actually think the old copy, at least, might have actually done a little bit of a better job. Maybe that's just me. It could just be me. But I do think that there were some things about the older copy that were much more successful. I think that the newer copy definitely rests on the growth and potentially even the laurels of Segment's success, and it's, in their own right. Not throwing any shade, but I do think that there's something missing when it comes to this new copy. I'm missing the pain. I'm missing why the alternatives are worse. I'm missing what sucks about those alternatives. So either not using Segment or using something else. I want all of that. And granted, not all of that can happen on the homepage, but even just one extra line in every single one of these paragraphs could probably do that a little bit more justice. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm just gonna wrap it up. This was a long one. If you are still here, thank you so much for watching. I really hope this was helpful. And we did it. We did the full teardown. I offered maybe what I would change and what I would, some things that I think are really working extremely well. And yeah, I hope that this helps. And I also hope that, if anything, it helps you think about where you're at in the journey, what you can credibly and reliably claim. And then also, even the big companies, there's stuff to test and improve even with large company websites. So I say that to say, just copying Segment's website outright and directly, it's not necessarily going to give you the same result, and there's implications that we don't necessarily know about. We don't necessarily know how well this homepage converts, and we definitely don't know how well it converts in comparison to the old version. What I can say, however, is brand very obviously became super duper important moving forward, but there's also just some elements that are different. And I think that all of that plays into, again, where you're at in the journey, the maturity of the business, and then also the maturity of the market and the category that you're ultimately in. All of those things directly impact what you end up putting on the homepage. Okay, I'm gonna let you go, but if you enjoyed this website teardown, there's a couple of things for you to do. The first is to hit subscribe. Hit subscribe, possibly even hit the like button, whichever one. If you want to see more of these, I should hopefully be doing these about once a month. That's what my goal is. We got Segment out. The next one on the list I actually think is Full Story. So if you want to get the Full Story website teardown, make sure that you subscribe to my channel so that way you never miss another website teardown. And also, I produce content about go-to-market strategy, marketing strategy, growth strategy, and all of the wonderful fun things that go into that both strategically and tactically. So we're going to be talking about just all of those things when it comes to SaaS. The second thing to do is to actually go to demandmaven.io and go to the blog. You will find the other teardowns there on the blog. If you don't want to miss another teardown, you can get them delivered directly to your inbox whenever we publish them. So you can subscribe there for the website teardowns. You can also just subscribe generally to the blog, either one. But you will definitely know when the next one comes out, whether on YouTube or whether in your inbox. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye!